The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me. Do you think that you could repeat the question and I listen more attentively? There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't quite so easy to see.
I kind of miss Paul singing this.
I know, right? And his cute little ba, like he does that.
He adds the punctuation while he's singing.
Yeah, no Maddie today. Hey, how you guys doing? How's everything going? You're listening on in your car, you're listening on your iPod, your iPad, your
some sort of iDevice.
Some sort of iDevice. I is taking over the world, apparently. It's like Hal, right? I'm Tom Duggan. Thanks for listening to the Paying Attention podcast. No Maddie doing news today. She is preparing for her big gig at Gillette Stadium. And no Paul today. I should have brought Paul in. I told him he could take the week off. He always seems like he's got one foot out the door. He denies that, but it really does seem that way sometimes. He's always like, well, you didn't need me today because you talked all about local stuff. And so we have a guest coming in. We have the Lawrence Police Chief, Roy Vasquez, going to be joining us. And we're going to be talking about the two most recent murders that have happened in Lawrence. We'll talk about the dwindling crime in Lawrence. We'll talk about some of the outside agencies in Lawrence right now, some of the deportations that are happening. We won't tell him that, though, until he's like really comfortable and happy here.
I like how you play.
Yeah.
I like how you play.
We'll get him all comfortable, and then we'll start throwing those questions at him. We'll see how he does. Before we do, though, we've got a bunch of things that I want to talk about. It'd be great to have Paul here for some of these discussions because he's Mr. Devil's Advocate. He never actually says anything. He just likes to ask lots of questions. You ever notice that about Paul?
Almost in a passive-aggressive way.
Yeah. So we have a couple things. The big news this week, you would think that there were no police officers killed in America in the last 48 hours. You would think that we didn't have any kind of conflict around the world in Israel or Pakistan or anywhere else. You would think that there are no missing children in the United States anywhere in the last 48 hours because CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of the media, with the exception of Fox, has spent 24/7 coverage on the most important issue of our generation. It's the most important issue that's going to affect everyone's lives, and that's Rosenne Barr having her show canceled.
Right.
Right? I flipped on CNN, and they're talking about Rosenne Barr, then breaking news. I'm going, oh, good, they're going to go back to real news, right? No, the breaking news was ABC canceled their show. I'm like, okay, good. Well, now that we know that they canceled their show, there's no more controversy. Now they'll go back to talking about, like, maybe missing kids or conflict in the Middle East.
Something important.
Yeah, something, well, not really quite as important as Roseanne, right? Like, the whole Israeli thing, world peace, North Korea, that's not quite as important as Roseanne. But I figured that maybe they'd get back to some of that. Instead, for the last 48 hours, there has not been one other story covered on CNN. I've watched it incessantly in my office throwing things at the TV. They have talked about Roseanne. So let's talk about Roseanne because we know that is clearly the most important thing going on in the country to everyone's lives.
It's very important.
I know people that called in sick today because they were so upset about Roseanne having her show canceled, or other people that called in sick because Roseanne said naughty words. They were just so beside themselves.
I'm confused when they decided to do the reboot. Did they not know they were hiring Rosenne Barr?
It's like hiring Howard Stern and then being really upset that he's talking about lesbians. Right?
Craziness.
Right? So, but here's the thing. It's not... All right, so let's go back to what she said. So she made a comment on Twitter. I happen to think it's a very racist comment. You don't, so we can discuss that. And what she said was that if the Planet of the Apes and the Muslims had a child, it would be Valerie Jarrett, who is a former Obama administration hack. And the media, of course, if anything that has to do with race, it becomes the most important thing of our generation. So CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, all of them with the exception of Fox. And Fox even did a little bit on it too. just incessantly talked about how it's racism. And, by the way, all Donald Trump's fault. That's my favorite part.
I just don't understand how it is racist.
Well, when you're comparing someone of African-American heritage to apes, I can see how people
could take it that way.
Now, she may not have meant it that way, but it really was kind of I think it was a racist comment.
I think it rides the line, and I think you get, again, you know what you're getting with Rosenne Barr.
Right.
So it was not a shock to me to read that that's what she wrote.
Right.
I don't think that it was good judgment on her part.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's
I don't know that she has good judgment.
She certainly doesn't, but
No.
I don't know that she deserved to be fired. I don't think that 200 people deserve to lose their jobs over it.
Hold on, we have to stop the show. I'm getting my coffee from Sean the barista. Sean the barista. Thank you, brother. This is the dock roast, right? Oh, yeah, the best.
Not that it matters. You put
try
cream and sugar in it.
Milk. I can't eat cream.
Oh, really?
Milk and sugar. Oh, my God, that's the best coffee
Why don't you just eat ice cream?
That's the best coffee ever. I can't eat ice cream. I have like a whole dairy thing I can't have, but I can have whole milk. That's the one thing I can't have. So back to Roseanne. So they hired Roseanne. They rebooted this show. Roseanne's a big Trump supporter. So therefore, anyone who's a Trump supporter who says something bad or does something bad, this is the lesson we're learning from CNN today.
Sure.
It's obviously because Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump is a Nazi and he's a racist, and therefore anyone who likes him, who says bad things, it's his fault. And we saw, and the best part about watching CNN is when the anger subsides about when I'm watching CNN, I get angry first because when I first put it on, I still, for some reason, even though I should know better, think that they're going to commit at least some act of journalism today. Like at some point, they're going to tell us something that's actually news. Because it's in the name of the friggin' network. It's cable news network. So it's like, okay, so they're going to talk about Trump's a Nazi, and it's going to be all politics, and it's going to be all what the Democrat Party wants them to say every day. They get their talking points from the DNC, and they just do that and pretend it's news. I get that. But at least at some point during the day, like a kid's going to get shot, they're going to come on and go, breaking news, a kid got shot. They didn't do any of that the last 48 hours. Nothing.
Right.
It was all, Roseanne is evil. She's an anti-Semite. She once dressed in a Hitler costume. Now, here's the thing. There's like a whole bunch of things we can talk about on this, Jonathan. And by the way, the voice you're hearing is the voice of God, Mr. Jonathan, my producer. One, we can talk about the racist aspect of it. We can talk about how ABC knew what they were getting into. But we can also get into, I'm not going to defend Rosenne Barr. I hate Rosenne Barr. I've always hated Rosenne Barr. But I don't think, having said that anyone should lose their job because of something that they said. And what's interesting about all of this is just 72 hours ago, before 48 hours ago.
Oh, say you're going to say the NFL.
I am going to say the NFL.
NFL.
So 72 hours ago, CNN was obsessed on what at that point was the most important topic in our generation, which was it's a violation of NFL players' First Amendment rights to make them stand for the flag. And it was a full 48 hours of CNN talking about how their constitutional rights were being violated because they should never be punished for what they say or do because that's the First Amendment. And then the following day, Roseanne happens, and suddenly, like, they changed their whole philosophy has completely changed now. Now suddenly it's not, geez, we're going to stand by Roseanne because even though what she said was horrible, she has the free speech right to say it. No, now suddenly they're taking the Republican position. Suddenly they're saying, oh, no, wait a minute now. She doesn't have a right to, she can still say it, but she doesn't have a right to have a show on ABC, which, by the way, was the argument about the NFL players. They have the right to not stand for the flag, but they don't have a right to work for the NFL. And so when you're watching MSNBC, when you're watching CNN, when you're watching all of these propaganda networks, everything that they say is a fucking lie. Everything that they say is a lie. All of it.
My issue is that the NFL players are on payroll during the time that the NFL is asking them to exercise decorum during the opening ceremonies.
Right.
They don't have to actually be out there. They have the option of being in the locker room, but if they're on the field, they are representing the NFL on payroll during work. This is how you have to act, just like my employees have to act a certain way while they're here at Two Guys Smoke Shop.
Right.
Period. Roseanne was not on the set when she tweeted it.
Right.
She was on her own time. It's her own Twitter.
Right. But ABC still has the right to fire her. I don't think they should have fired her, but they have the right to fire her.
Of course they have the right to fire her, and I have the right to never watch any ABC show ever again as long as I live, which is where I'm going.
I've been boycotting ABC for a long time anyway, so I wasn't even watching Roseanne. But it's very interesting when you watch the dynamic of, like, CNN is so shameless that, like, they actually pretend what they said yesterday never happened.
Right.
Like, they pretend that, like, we didn't take the exact opposite side of this view 24 hours ago, now that we're talking about Roseanne. And by the way, has anyone seen my friend Jeffrey Lord on CNN lately? Remember Jeffrey Lord? He was a CNN contributor on Don Lemon's show. He tweeted out at a liberal who made some kind of a comment about why we should take somebody's free speech rights away, and said Heil Hitler over Twitter to the other person, basically saying you're a fascist. CNN fired him for that. So CNN can fire him for that, and they did. He's been off CNN now for at least a month. And he's a good friend of the show, by the way. He's a good friend of the Valley Patriot. Jeffrey Lord's a great guy. But he's gone. He's not on CNN anymore. You can't find Jeffrey Lord anywhere, right? But CNN had no problem taking away what they call First Amendment right. But then when it's the NFL players, well, no, that's terrible. That's against the First Amendment. But then when it's Roseanne, no, we're going to change our mind again. And so I'm bringing this up because I want you guys to understand, who don't watch the news all the time, that when you frequently or infrequently put on the news because something catches your eye, there's a shooting or something, and maybe you're just flipping through channels, you've just got to remember that every single thing they're telling you is a lie. Everything. Like, I watch CNN looking for something that's right. Like, I watch every day going, okay, at some point they're going to say something that's true. And they don't. And even when they come out with, like, a breaking news story about a shooting or a breaking news story about something else, it's always with this twisted political end that it's all Donald Trump's fault. Like, there's a mall shooting in Illinois, and if Donald Trump had only taken away our guns, it wouldn't be happening. No matter what it is, Mr. Jonathan.
I'm with you there.
So anyways, dripping
I think
Tanzanian coffee all over my computer.
Couldn't it be said that it is a racist behavior on CNN's part because they are taking the side of the NFL players who they believe to be black?
Right.
And the reason that it's an issue is because we are taking away the black voice in the NFL.
Yes.
Their sentiment, not mine. And Roseanne is white.
Yep.
And she said something that could be construed as racist. I get that it can be. I didn't take it that way, but I see how someone could take it that way. Isn't it racism on their part that they are treating black people differently than white people, which would be the definition of racism?
CNN is one of the most racist networks on television, if not MSNBC is probably a little worse. But the constant race baiting and attacking people on CNN based on the color of their skin, usually white people, right? And you listen to Don Lemon every night, and they're talking about white privilege, and they label and stereotype white people as if we're all one thing, and that we all benefited from some kind of systematic oppression of the last 400 years. And I thought it's really amazing that they came out and said that, judging people based on the color of their skin is wrong, because that's never been their position. Their position has always been that it's okay to be racist against white people, to discriminate against Catholics and Christians, but not okay to attack black people or to attack Muslims. If you attack a Muslim, that's terrible. But Christians are destroying the country, all of them, every single one. So I watch and I watch and I wait, and eventually they'll have a panel discussion with 9 people. 8 of them are left-wing lunatics. 1 is like a moderate conservative, and they spend their whole time talking over him so that everything that he says, you can't hear what he's saying.
And half the time he's a booger-eating moron who's literally drooling on his shirt.
Right, yeah.
They don't pick the brightest bulbs.
Right.
To portray the right side.
And Jeffrey Lord was, he was okay on that show. He was okay on Don Lemon. He was okay on Anderson Cooper. But he wasn't really a shark either. He wasn't out there really pounding his fist and throwing it right back at them. I would love to run into Don Lemon someday. I would love to run into Anderson Cooper someday. I would just love it. Because these guys are actors. They're not news people. But they pretend to be news people. But they're not. And they're as racist can be. But they pretend that they're against racism. And that's the new Orwellian America that we're living now, where if you yourself are engaging in racism, it's always important to label what you're doing as anti-racist.
Right.
And just imagine if I came on here and talked about black privilege in America today. What if I came in here and I talked about all the racial set-asides in colleges, all the racial set-asides, and the liberals can have all their excuses for why that is, but they can't dispute the fact that it's racist. They can't dispute the fact that they're treating people differently based on their race. And Tucker Carlson had a guy on last night. I can't remember his name, but he's an Obama hack. He asked him 5 times, is it always wrong to judge people based on their race? Is it always wrong to treat people differently based on their race? And the guy couldn't answer the question. Eventually, at the end, he said, well, yes, but. Well, listen, there's no but. It's either always wrong or it's not.
Right.
Like, if it's always wrong, then it's always wrong. And we know that there's always an exception to the rule. But if it's always wrong, it's always wrong. And if it's not always wrong, then tell us when it's not wrong. He couldn't do that. No liberal can do that. No Democrat can do that. Because they believe in racism. They just don't believe in racism against people who vote Democrat. They don't believe in racism against black people. They don't believe in racism against Latinos. But I'll say it again. If Latinos in droves started voting Republican, Elizabeth Warren would be out there building the wall herself and setting up concentration camps for people to be deported. And we all know that's true. Even people who support her know that that's true. Because the fact is...
That might be the best thing that you've ever said.
Because it's true, right?
It is true. It's funny because it's true.
So when we hear these concepts, I guess MSNBC had a panel discussion yesterday or the day before on racism. And all it was black racists who hate white people talking about how horrible white people are. And I keep shaking my head going, like, how does anyone with common sense follow this? We have a riot going on downstairs?
That's a good question.
What's going on down there?
Oh, you know what? There's graduations happening. So
they're all coming in for their cigars?
They're coming in for their cigars.
Very good. We should have them come up on the show. So I told the Tomaselli sisters, if you can be here at 2, I'll give you 10 minutes. And I got a text message that said, see you at 2:15. So I said, too late. So what time did they walk in? What time is it? 2:15. Yep. It's too late. It's too late. So we've got this Rosenne Barr thing going on. I'm okay with ABC firing her. They've got a right to fire her. They shouldn't have, especially when you look at people like who's that blonde slut that's on the E Network? Samantha Bee. I've seen her show exactly once, and it was the most vile, overly sexual, racist thing that I've ever seen in my life. She thinks she's being edgy, but if you have the same opinion as everybody in Hollywood, it's not really all that edgy, right?
Sure.
Everybody agrees with you. She has said some horrible things. She has called Donald Trump a Nazi, right? Outright came out and called him a Nazi. Intimated one day that Donald Trump, he might even be a child molester. You never know, right? And yet, she's never been fired. She didn't get fired for what she said. Nor should she be.
Sure.
However, it would be wrong for us to not point out that there's a total hypocrisy going on here. And we know that this is hypocrisy.
What kills me is that the Roseanne Barr show was starting to go down the road of bringing together lots of different cultures. You had transgender kid on the show. You had the black granddaughter, the formerly lesbian sister who may or may not be a lesbian anymore. You couldn't tell by the way that things were going.
I thought you were born lesbian.
You may be, but this is an actor playing a lesbian.
Right.
So I thought early on in the first few seasons she was a lesbian, and it was edgy back then. And so they have all these cultures coming together and really could have done something to bring the country together.
Right.
But
it was the new Archie Bunker where it was okay to talk about things that it's not okay to talk about anywhere else, and give people a look at why other people who disagree with you feel the way that they feel. I thought the concept of the show was great. I hate Roseanne, so I just didn't watch it. But the real reason why it's 48 hours of fuck Roseanne on CNN and everywhere else is because Roseanne loves Donald Trump. If Roseanne loved Barack Obama, she'd still have her job today. She would come out and say, I'm really sorry, but I love Obama. And they go, oh, okay. So what's the next show going to be about? Right? And then we would all be moving on. We'd be talking about, we'd be back to talking about the NFL players.
The company that produces Ambien did send out a tweet saying that
come on,
that racism is not a known side effect of Ambien.
Yes,
so they did cover their bases.
Listen, I don't know what the real story is, and none of you do either. It's very possible. I've taken Ambien. I've taken a lot of other things too. It's very possible that she was in some kind of a stupor when she tweeted that. Now, admitting that you were in a stupor when you did it makes it actually, I think, worse. So she should have just kept it to herself.
Well, you got to do what everybody else does and just say, my account was hacked. I'm so sorry.
Right, yeah.
And you just destroy the account and you start over from scratch.
Like that idiot on MSNBC who tweeted all those anti-gay things, and now she's saying, oh, no, my account was hacked when we know it wasn't hacked. because she said like a million things like that before. But, why can't we just be honest? She should have just come out and said, you know what? That's how I really feel. And if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. Like, had she done that, I think she would still have her fan base, and there would be some other network that would pick her up, and they would continue with the Roseanne show. But once you start acquiescing, once you give in a little bit.
Yeah, you can't yield.
Then that's it. Then you've lost people on both sides, and you're done. And quite frankly, I'm not a fan of Roseanne. I think she's an idiot. When she disgraced our national anthem at a baseball game and grabbed her crotch, I didn't like her before that, but when she did that, that was it for me. But let's make no mistake about it. She's getting attacked, and she lost her show because she likes Trump. And now they have the excuse to say, see, Trump caused this. It's his caustic language and all the mean things that he says that makes other people feel like it's okay for them to do. And here's the new word. Trump is normalizing racism. He's normalizing it. But this is weird coming from the Democrat Party, which says nothing is normal. Right? Whenever you say, well, that's not normal, what's normal mean? Right? There is no such thing as normal. Boys can be girls, girls can be boys. There is no normal. But somehow Trump is normalizing something. I don't get that at all. So I got one more thing real quick. Then we got the police chief is here. Thank God. We love this guy. And if I didn't, boy, I would tell you, right?
Yes, you would.
I was really harsh on the last chief, maybe more harsh than I should have been. I just want to run one